Beijing has said that it is backing the city authorities to investigate the criminal responsibility of violent offenders. It has said that the serious illegal actions of the protesters have trampled the rule of law in the city-state. Remember, the protesters had taken over Legislative Chamber in the heart of Hong Kong yesterday. The protest was sparked by a flag-raising ceremony that marked 22 years of the city's handover to China from Great Britain. The protesters spray-painted slogans on walls and over the territory's emblem. The series of protests are against a controversial bill that would allow extraditions to mainland China. The protesters fear that the law would allow Beijing to seize anyone it likes and whisk them away to mainland China on trumped-up charges. The police evicted the demonstrators who occupied Hong Kong's legislature chamber in the wee hours this morning. It's not clear, though, that if any arrests have indeed been made. Now, the police charged towards the protester lines with riot shields and helmets after they refused to leave Hong Kong's legislative chamber. The police fired tear gas into the crowd after raising warning banners in order to chase them away. A cleaning operation was launched outside the Hong Kong legislative chamber this morning. Debris, including umbrellas, hard hats and water bottles, were the few signs left of the mayhem. Now, Hong Kong is slowly returning to normalcy as police cleared roads and businesses are returning to work. Now, Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, has condemned the extreme use of violence and vandalism by the protesters. Lam said that the government has not responded to every demand because of good reasons. Listen in.
It is not true to say that the government has not responded. We have not responded to every demand asked because of good reasons. Now, first of all, if the cause of the social tensions that we have seen is a bill to amend the Fugitive Offenders Ordinance, on the 15th of June, I have announced the suspension of the bill. And subsequently, we have explained and elaborated by suspending the bill at this point in time with no timetable and no plan to resume the debate of the bill in the Legislative Council.
And joining me live from Beijing is Wion One's very own Patrick Fok. Good evening, Patrick. Walk us through the latest you're picking up from Hong Kong. Is Hong Kong finally returning to normalcy?
As far as we understand, everything is back to normal today after a very hectic night indeed. We are told, according to reports, that the last of the protesters didn't get removed from the Legco complex until about 4 a.m. this morning. And, of course, a lot of people turned up at the scene today to see what had happened, the extent of the damage. And police had cordoned off access to the Legislative Council and were undertaking investigations, presumably to see who was responsible for some of the key action that took place last night. Meantime, the Legco president has called off all meetings for the next 2 weeks, and really there's very little activity going on there. The extent of the damage is really extensive, and as we've said before, what happened previously was something that's completely unprecedented in Hong Kong, and I think there's very little sympathy for some of the damage that was caused by the protesters last night. Of course, there were some individuals that were trying to stop the protesters around the area storming the Legislative Council, but as far as we understand, and those included some lawmakers, I might add as well, they were brushed aside and simply couldn't do anything to stop the rampage last night.
Also, Patrick, let's talk a bit about the politics in Hong Kong today as we speak. Where is Carrie Lam? What is she up to? I mean, can we expect her to pick up the pieces and go about business as usual? Or you think people such as Joshua Wong, the face of the protest, so to speak, they're insisting that she should step down and make way for somebody else?
Well, Carrie Lam appeared very early indeed this morning to respond to the crisis that's ensued in Hong Kong. And as we heard a moment ago, she said that the government has already given a response to the protesters and they've suspended the extradition bill, but they aren't prepared to withdraw it for very good reasons, she said. That's unlikely to appease the protesters. They've been protesting for several weeks now, and really frustrations have boiled over and turned into anger. As far as we understand, according to the Civil Human Rights Front, they're the organiser of the massive marches that have taken place over the last few weeks. The protesters had requested a dialogue with the chief executive, but that was apparently turned down. That's despite the chief executive yesterday, during the handover celebrations, saying that she would listen to different views in society. So that's an indication that perhaps she hasn't been entirely true to her word, and we can understand.
All right, I'm afraid we've lost that link with Patrick Fok in Beijing, but that was Wion World is One's very own Patrick Fok with all the latest about the Hong Kong protests live from Beijing.